for sound, and this is your It's Your Turn program. Remember, It's Your Turn is an interactive program, so the numbers to call are 457 if you're calling from a local landline, 532 9997 if you're calling from a digital cell phone, or you can send us a message or call us on WhatsApp at 457 9997. The It's Your Turn program is being hosted by Mr. Cecil and Mr. Philbert John. Good morning to you, Cecil.
Good morning to you, Karen, and good morning to Philbert, and good morning to all our listeners, wherever you are. We welcome you to another Issue at Hand program. And of course, we are especially pleased to do so, considering that you who are listening, we consider you to be part of the WEFM family, and of course, the Issue at Hand family for sure. And that is why we say it's a family affair. So welcome and be at ease, and we're glad that you're present, according to Kian Marshall. Present, please. So good morning, and it's good to have you on board with us this morning. Joel isn't here this morning. He's elsewhere. Don't know if you'd have a chance to listen to the program, but he's welcome to call in if he so desires. And this morning, well, let me turn over to Pijan to greet you, and I will come back to tell you about the program. Pijan.
Thank you, Cecil. Good morning. Good morning to all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and to all persons listening to WEFM wherever you are. It's good to be back as we engage you with another edition of Issue at Hand. And as you have grown accustomed to, we plan to engage you with an interesting discussion on issues making the day in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So listening, call a friend, call a neighbor, engage with us as we engage with you in another edition of the program. Cecil?
All right, Pijan. This morning on the program, we're supposed to be having as our guest. He's not here yet. Well, I'll announce his name when he comes in, but we want to discuss Budget 2026, imperatives for development and daily living in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we're going to be looking at that later on. But in the meantime, until such time that our guest comes in, I want to look at a couple of things. I don't know if Pijan himself has any, but I have a few. I want to start with this one, and I urge and I invite persons who are on with us already. Please take it in. Well, first dust. In fact, it was the first dust disturbed at the Argyle International Airport. That was 9 years ago, February 14. That was Valentine's Day, Pijan. You keep track of these things, I don't really, but that was Valentine's Day in 2017. Actually, Valentine's Day was yesterday. So, as 9 years ago, we're into the 9th year when the first aircraft of international standards landed at Argyle International Airport. And that aircraft was, I'm going to leave it for somebody to call and share, tell us what was the name of the aircraft that landed there on that day. And as we as we celebrate that landing, the construction and the opening of the Argyle International Airport and eventually the landing, many more aircrafts from different sources and from different venues have landed at the Argyle International Airport. As a matter of fact, today, I have one of my relatives landing there this afternoon from all the way from Calgary, Canada. So he should be landing there this afternoon. And later on in the week, I have two other relatives. One leaving for the UK and the other one coming from the UK. That's what's happening these days, you know. And it was a moment that we can never forget in the context of development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and in particular, air transport availability in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to other parts of the world. We have to give thanks and be mindful of that. I want to share with our listeners the list of countries that enabled that landing. And I'll come just now to the workers and the vision, but I want to list some of the countries that contributed to that moment. Cuba provided grants and soft loan, and of course, the workers. Venezuela contributed, well, they were the initial contributor financially and also through grants and soft loans. Taiwan chipped in with a significant sum to enable the construction of the terminal building. And the company Overseas Engineering and Construction Company Limited, OECC, they were the ones who constructed the terminal building. And of course, our good friends and neighbors in Trinidad and Tobago, in particular, former Prime Minister Patrick Manning, provided $10 million to that effort. We know also that Mexico contributed, Austria contributed, Malaysia contributed, Turkey, Iran, Portugal, Libya, and of course, we know that here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the country did provide certain sums, partly using the lands in Argyle as a basis for raising those sums, not in Argyle, sorry, in Bequia, raising those sums. And of course, the CARICOM Development Fund provided loans, including $14 million EC and another 8.8 million. So that's part of the story of the landing you just heard at Argyle. The other part is that the people behind the vision for this, and history has to take note. History is taking note. Here in St. Vincent is our former Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. He is the man who had the vision and the will and the wherewithal to mobilize all the resources from all these countries. And he was able to approach leaders like the former or the past giants in the Caribbean. President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, and we give huge thanks to the people of Venezuela and the leadership there. And he was followed by President Maduro. And again, we give massive thanks to the people of Venezuela and and the leaders in Venezuela. And of course, we can never miss President Fidel Castro of Cuba, who committed resources, including human resources from his country, to do the Argyle International Airport against all odds. And of course, going back to Mexico, Professor Perez was also from the Mexican, one of the Willings, Coalition of the Willings. Remember that term, the Coalition of the Willing, who contributed to the airport construction. So we have all of that, and we have to give thanks, serious thanks, because as a result of Argyle, and even before I come to that, I want to hail up my good friend, Isa. I know he's listening, in Simon. Isa and I became friends being from the airport, the construction of the airport. Isa used to drive one of those massive trucks there, and at times he would, when I went out there to walk and to exercise, he would invite me in his truck and I drove with him on many missions. With his, the good thing is that his truck was AC, it was air conditioned, so it was good to be in there. Another gentleman from that era was also Harry I think he was from Park Hill. Harry had a story by himself. Every day Harry would wash his truck, and I couldn't believe it. After dwelling in mud, rain or sun or whatever all day, Harry would get up and park his truck, one of those same big trucks, at the pipe, and then hose it down. Next day, his truck was as clean as a whistle. Another man, a brother from Stubbs, and he told me a particular story which I share. I mean, I experienced that myself, driving as a driver, but his was particularly poignant because he said when he used to drive the truck going down the Stubbs Bay, his right foot used to tremble. And that is true. These trucks used to have huge loads, carry huge tons of stone and waste. And he used to drive that truck. Well, not him alone, others, but he in particular told me the story that his foot used to tremble driving that truck down the Stubbs Bay. And I remember people like Brother Little from up Murray's village up there, and Brother Joe, he has passed on, and many others. I remember workers from Diamond Village, Sandy, and other people from Diamond Village, Country Diamond, Newgrounds, as in Diamond Newgrounds, who worked at there. And of course, I can also remember Jennifer Richardson, who provided ongoing update on what's happening there. And how we cannot forget the gentleman who provided ongoing photo update. His name is slipping me now, but I'll get it before the end. And Pitch and we ourselves, we chipped in. We were there. We did a number of live broadcasts, WEFM. Marlon Stevens, I remember when Marlon did one and did a live from different points. People like Justice Colin Williams. He told me that his hair on his arm raised when he was listening to Marlon from the on the spot report. So we did our part as well. WEFM.
There's a name that we should always mention at the beginning. That is Rudy Matthias.
Rudy Matthias, I was coming to him, but yes, but Rudy Matthias for sure, giant. And in terms of his understanding of development economics and economics generally, and his leadership.
What struck me about him, he made it sound so simple.
Simple. He made it sound simple.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because of the fact that he's such a humble person. Yeah. But he did make it sound simple. And it's and I don't know, some people may not appreciate even what I'm saying now, far less the whole idea of the Argyle International Airport, but they will in time do that. And all the people who sacrificed And the people who passed away during the construction, we have to also remember them. Like Jeffrey Kitto, for example, and there are others who passed away. We must remember them. Because that airport has made it's such a fundamental paradigm shift in the development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As a result of the AIA, we have so many airlines coming here now. We have Sanders, which is doing a fantastic job in terms of contributing to growth, development, and employment, and all of those things. And then there are others. We have the Holiday Inn Express. We have out at Diamond as well. We have the Maya Suite. And we have a number of, there's some that were projected. I'm not sure if they're going to go on, but certainly Sandals Beaches is one that come as a result of Argyle. Then the Marriott. And then there are others up the western or leeward coast, we know. So that, that is what is called real development in action, in living colors. You can see it happening. I saw it happening. That as a result of the leadership, the will, and the commitment, this Argyle happened. And as Argyle happened, other things are happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the area of development. I mean, I'm aware of, but I disregard the negatives because there have always been negatives. People who did not see the vision of the Argyle International Airport. And some people went overboard to condemn and to damn the construction of the Argyle International Airport. And it's sad, but these things happen in our history. We have to point them out. Oh, yes, somebody just reminded me of the gentleman whose name I was trying to remember a while ago. Yes, his name is, thank you. His name is Sidney Morgan. Remember Sidney Morgan used to be the cameraman. Every week he'd post, practically every day sometimes, he's posting update on the construction that's happening there.
You have to remember drop a dollar.
Well, I was coming back to the last thing because I want to highlight in particular the issue at hand, Drop a Dollar Man, and his Fitzgerald Huggins. Fitzhuggins, who was our Consul General once in Toronto, Canada. Yes, this is where the Drop a Dollar idea took off, And the whole idea of the Drop a Dollar campaign was not necessarily to raise money, but to have people take ownership and identify with the construction of the airport. Because, you may have, Drop a Dollar may have earned a few dollars, hundreds or maybe thousands, but that was really the fundamental reason. The fundamental reason to have people take ownership and identify with the construction of the airport. And a lot of people did. Some people made fun or tried to make fun with the idea of Drop a Dollar, but, history would put them where they deserve to be. All those persons who went out, even those who talk about, who wish that a tsunami would come and wash away the airport, or there needs to be a wind shifter, history would put them in their places. And so I'm not worried about that. We have a call, Pigeon, let's just take the call. Morning, welcome to the program. You're early.
Good morning, Cecil. Good morning, Pigeon. This is Kirk. Going to the airport, I read a post from a lady. She'd been coming to St. Vincent. She started returning to St. Vincent since the international airport opened. She was one of the parts on the first flight. She said she was so disappointed yesterday when she flew in, and there was no celebration that she normally get when she come home. For the last umpteenth time when she come home since the airport opened, she comes.
You mean on the anniversary date? That's what you mean?
Yeah. But she said that nothing happened yesterday.
Right, on the anniversary
was-
date. That's, yes, okay.
Yeah. So she's very disappointed. She said she make it a business to come home on the anniversary date to get that celebration, and nothing happened. And she just hoping that it was just one of those one-off, and that the next day they will go back to doing it. I mean, to me, that is a little disappointing when if somebody, plan the vacation just to enjoy that moment in the international airport or international airport, and then it was just took away, just stopped just like that. I mean, she didn't sound like she was so happy about that at all. She was very, very much disappointed. And I hope the power to be is listening, and they could do it next year. So, people who make that journey for that could still feel,
Well, to be honest, I'm disappointed that the management at Argyle International Airport didn't. Well, I don't know if they made an effort. I don't know, but clearly, that was missing. And I hope I hope the management would make an.
I hope it's just a mistake this time that they lapse out or something or whatever happened. I don't know, but I hope they put it back in. Because regardless to party or what, the celebration is the celebration. It's like you can't stop certain celebration. You can't stop independence. Independence is independence. It's going to happen. And you open the national airport, it's a moment occasion. So you should be celebrated, regardless of who's in power. You can't just stop it because the party change or the government change. To me, that's a sad thing.
The airport, the commencement of operation at the airport was a paradigm shift in the development of St. Vincent and Grenadines. That's what it was. We may not, some of us may feel differently, but I mean, it is what it is, The
whole economy change.
Entire economy change, including the way people live, people relate. That changed.
Yeah. I mean, I now could plan my trip and knowing that I leave California, and yes, I have to stop on the East Coast because there's no straight or direct flight, because both of them is kind of same thing. Because some people say straight flight, some people say direct flight. There's none that leaves California and goes straight to St. Vincent. They just stop. I have to stop on the East Coast. But when I do that on the East Coast, I don't come out to the airport. I do nothing. I just move from one plane to the next plane easily. I don't touch my suitcase from California to St. Vincent.
Well, Kocho, that is exactly what's going to happen with my relative who's coming in this afternoon from Canada, who's landing at AIA from Canada. She left Calgary last night, and she will not be touching her last night or early this morning. Anyway, she will not be touching her luggage. She will not be coming off the aircraft. She will change aircraft, but she will not be touching her luggage until she gets to St. Vincent.
Most people who do those kind of flights, they have to do what we call the red eye. So you travel a lot. So
I'm aware of what that is, but I don't know if that's what you do. I cannot say. I didn't get all of those details.
Most of the time, in order to catch that early morning flight, a lot of people have to do the red eye.
Okay.
What is the red eye?
Meaning that you just stay at the airport, you don't sleep, you just go on to the next plane. You hang around the airport.
Right.
And you go on to the next.
You leave in the night, get there in the morning, and catch your flight.
Yeah.
So you're not really, you can sleep on the plane, but you still can't do it. So.
All right, Kocho.
All
right, then. Thanks for calling. And we expect you to call again when we get into the main discussion this morning. And I didn't mention the name of that aircraft that landed. I think it was Sunwing. I don't know if you remember that. That was the Sunwing. It was a chartered flight, and as some people were saying in the comments in the thing that we played, that it was going on to Guyana. I'm not sure about that, but it was I think it had some Guyanese connection, but it was Sunwing was the aircraft. So yes, that was. So I want to again big up and give thanks to all those people who made significant contribution to the construction of the Argyle International Airport under the leadership of former Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. And again, I want to give a shout out to my friend out in Simon. He's listening. I'm sure he's listening. And he knows about all those experiences. And incidentally, I want to mention that, they're having some challenges with part of the runway. Not the runway, the taxiway. Pigeon, I don't know if you know that. I remember that didn't just happen, because one of the huge challenges that I recall the engineers had was to control, that area there is a kind of springy area. It's always a kind of spring coming up there. Water is always there. And I remember I used to go there, look at them, talk to some of the engineers and the challenges they used to have. So it's not something new. It's just that maybe the engineers didn't do certain things. But I know that whole area around the tarmac and the cargo building, they had serious challenge with water. And the terminal building, in fact, serious challenge with water. So we have to appreciate, the odds were great. The odds were massive. And to have that airport operating now and doing so well and contributing to the development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have to give a lot of credit to all of those who were connected with the construction of that airport. Yeah, there may be one or two other things I'm missing on that, but never mind. And, Pigeon, somebody sent me a message. I know our guest is already in studio. Let me tell our listeners that. But before we get to our guest, well, he's aware that sometimes we have some issues before we get into the main topic. So I'm going to hope he has. I'm sure you'd understand. But there's a message that, oh yes. I want to read, if not in whole, in part, this message that Dr. James shared with me. He received it and he shared it with me, and I think I am obligated to read part of it this morning. It says, friends, on the day of love, that meaning yesterday, I am moved to share the following letter, which I received from Havana this morning. This is a Google translation of it. Anything does not read too smoothly, understand why. I share an open letter from one of the millions of Cuban women of homeland or death. Open letter to the world from Cuba. An ordinary woman denounces the crime they refuse to see. To all of humanity, to the mothers of the world, to Doctors Without Borders, to journalists with dignity, to the governments that still believe in justice. My name is, and the name is not listed, like millions of others. I don't have a well-known surname or hold an important position. I am an ordinary Cuban woman, a daughter, a sister, a patriot, and I write this with a broken heart and trembling hands because what my people are experiencing today is not a crisis. It is a slow, calculated. Bear with me while I think I adjusted something. Yes, it is a slow, calculated, coldly executed murder orchestrated from Washington. And the world looks the other way. I denounce the story of my grandparents I denounce the fact that in Cuba, elderly people are dying prematurely because the blockade prevents the arrival of medication for heart conditions, high blood pressure, and diabetes. This Yes, sorry about that. My unfamiliarity with the device. I denounce the fact that incubators in Cuba have had to be shut down due to lack of fuel. That newborns are fighting for their lives while the United States government decides which countries can sell us oil and which cannot. The Cuban mothers have seen their children's lives endangered because an order signed in Washington, in a Washington office, is worth more than the cry of a baby 90 miles away. Where is the international community? Where are the organizations that so vehemently defend children? Or do Cuban children do not deserve to live? Denouncement of international hunger. I denounce the blockage as programmed hunger. It is not that there is a lack of food for no reason. It's that we are prevented from buying it. It is that ships carrying food are harassed. It's that bank transactions are blocked. It is that companies that sell us grains, chicken, and milk are sanctioned. Hunger in Cuba is not an accident. It is a state policy of the United States government, refined over 60 years, updated by each administration, intensified by Donald Trump, and viciously implemented by Marco Rubio. They call this economic pressure. I call it terrorism through hunger. And it goes on, but I think it's going to take up a fair amount, and maybe next week I'll continue and read the rest of it, because it's worth reading, it's worth drawing to attention of our listeners, of course, and of course the world, what's happening to the people of Cuba. And earlier on I was saying that Cuba is one of those countries who helped us with the construction of that Argyle International Airport, and it made a significant difference. As I said earlier, it was a paradigm shift in our development. So we have to make these connections. We have to relate to these stories and see in what way we can help to spread and popularize what's happening in Cuba. All right, that's a long one, Pijan. Pijan, any announcement from you? There are one or two other things, but I'll leave them for the time being.
I just was looking forward to hearing a statement from the government regarding the condition of our students in Cuba, given the current developments.
Mm-hmm.
How many are there? What are their conditions? And what, if anything, can we do from this point to alleviate their conditions?
Mm-hmm. Well, I know the St. Vincent Grenadines Cuba Friendship Society has been, they have, and some other folks have been involved in putting out releases. But, with me, always, things need to go beyond releases. You have to have action. And until you hear from the government, I think this SVG Cuba Friendship Society perhaps may wish to start an appeal, because it may come down to, providing some resources to share with the folks there. But I haven't heard any announcement of any kind of action on the basis of the Cuba SVG Friendship Society. I would urge that something of that nature be considered. I'm sure Dr. James is listening. Dr. James may wish to bring that to the full attention of his colleagues in the society, in that friendship society. But yes, Pigeon, I agree with you. You just can't sit back and allow these things to happen and notice it. You know, it's certainly from the government perspective, it may not be in a position to do anything on its own, but within CARICOM, you know, CARICOM could give some level of attention. Anyway, we can't allow things to just keep us in a state of gloom and doom. We got to look forward and move forward with things. And we do apologize to our guests, and we're going to bring him in now in terms of our main discussion. And we had a late start this morning, but we're here, and we, as usual, we're happy to be here. So this morning, we want to look at Budget 2026 and look what is other imperatives for us here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, kitchen table things, you know, going forward. So we're very happy to have with us this morning a gentleman who is not a stranger, very established and certified accountant and auditor, and he's managing his particular firm, KDLT. I'm very pleased to have and to introduce to our audience this morning, Mr. Kirk DaSilva. Mr. DaSilva, greetings and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Cecil. Thank you for having me on your program this morning. Good morning to all our listeners, and I hope we have a good discussion today.
Yes, so Budget 2026 just went. We know the basic summary of it in terms of $1.9 billion. On the current account, it has I think it's on the current account, and deficit of $105,000. $1,000,000. And there are some other nitty-gritties and which we may wish to bring out. But yes, what do you think of that budget, DaSilva, in terms of its effects on people and people living?
I think generally, if we start out with the very theme of the budget, from rescue to resilience, building one nation together, and it addresses 4 strategic pillars of growth: agriculture, the blue economy, tourism, and the new economy. But I think the budget, in presenting the budget, the Minister of Finance or Prime Minister started out with the national debt, if those of you who read through the budget. And yes, he did mention that you know, the country is faced with a fiscal situation characterized by high government debt, with a debt GDP ratio of 110%. And I think we need to look at it. But I need fundamentally as well to look at the fact that it's a deficit. And a lot of people tend to think of both issues. Is national debt a bad thing or a good thing? And you'll need to answer the question. It could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing. And the same for the deficit. A lot of people think, oh, it's a deficit budget, but it could be a bad thing and it could be good as well. So it can be, the answers for both questions can be yes, it can be good, it can be bad. If the government spends more money to help stimulate the economy, having debt is good. But we need to take into consideration that 39% of the debt service ratio, what the Minister of Finance described as a hook in the gill, regardless of whether we think the national debt is good or bad, is the fact that he can call it, he is justified in calling it a hook in the gill, because it makes it harder for the government to spend on education, infrastructure, and special programs, etc. So moreover, it may be more difficult for it to borrow money since it's perceived to be a risk of default and that sort of thing. But I see no immediate danger, no immediate problem with the debt as it is. And during the budget, he spoke about continuing the policy of trying to get it down by the year 2035, in keeping with the Eastern Caribbean union and that sort of thing. So if we can start there and go on. In the budget as well, there are some pertinent points one may need to look at. There's talk about CBI, in St. Vincent has been debated around the Citizen by Investment Program. There's VAT, reduction in VAT, again, which has being discussed. But I think particularly looking at VAT from the perspective of VINLEC and reducing it. So that's again important, would raise questions, how it is done and that sort of thing. Public assistance increased. So there are things to look at during the budget, Cecil. I'm not too sure where you want us to start this morning, but generally, and plus there's some economic stabilizing measures, and as we go by, there are some capital investments mentioned, which are very pertinent, airport developments or airports development, and some tax and customs reform. As I mentioned, VAT reduction in essential goods and goods, particularly essential goods and electricity. So the development bank, talk about the development bank. So there are some pertinent issues, yes.
Okay. Perhaps we may pitch in, first of all, any reaction?
Not at the moment.
Because I think you may wish to clarify a few things even before we get into the fuller discussion. For example, the theme from rescue to reliance.
Resilience.
Resilience, sorry. Where did I get reliance from? Yes. Yeah, from rescue to resilience. The use of the word rescue suggests that things were bad in the economy.
I think when you read through the budget, to be honestly, when you read through it, I think the Minister of Finance or Prime Minister, I think he pays special attention here to the national debt. As I said, he referred to it as a hook in the gill. And regardless of how, as I mentioned before, even if the one may consider that the debt monies were spent on feasible projects, because the debt in St. Vincent really increased only after 2023 significantly. For example, in 2021, it was around 89.9%. 2022, it dropped a bit, 87.8%. In 2023, it was 85%. That's debt to the GDP ratio. But after, because of I believe because of the project, you had the projects. You had the airport, you had the hospital, the hospital, you had the new port in Kingston, you had various seaports, what you call it, barriers being built on the windward side. There were bridges and so forth.
City barriers, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So that's the question we need to ask.
But let me ask you for your own opinion.
Yeah.
So from what you said, the debt increase from 2023
around
that time, and these are the items that that the debt was allocated towards. You mentioned the port, the new port, the acute center hospital at Argyle, and you mentioned city fence. But all you're on,
there are more.
There are others, yeah. But all you're on, I'm taking it from what you said, that some debts are justifiable. I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but if those you would consider those as justifiable, or did you think the PM consider those as justifiable?
I would like to think so. I'd like to think.
So if they are,
I would like to think that the hospital is a good project. The one in Annisfield. I'd like to think the port is a good project. I'd like to think the city fences. I'd like to think bridges and other schools that may have been built are justifiable projects.
But there are a number of structures and houses in particular that were built.
That's the other
particularly
thing.
for the people of
money would have been spent.
Yeah, for the people of Union Island,
we forgot the hurricane burial.
Yeah. So those are, if those are justifiable projects, if that's justifiable expenditure, an increase in the debt, national debt, would you describe that as rescuing from that?
Well, he may look at it from the point of view in that it may restrict, it implies having to secure, for example, he has a deficit budget. There's a deficit budget of $105 million.
Mm-hmm.
And that deficit budget has to be financed.
Mm-hmm.
So the implications having to secure additional financing to meet these expenditures, which more than likely may result in further debt increases.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what he is getting at is the fact that, as I said, he described it as, what's the term I used, hook in the gill, in that it prevents you from spending now as one may like on social services, on doing further physical or other work.
Well, actually, that
very pertinent
that
areas.
hook in the gill term or phrase was coined by former Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves in a particular context, not in the same context. I think that the present Prime Minister is using it, and I think we need to clarify that as well, and to make sure that we understand what's happening, and people understand our discussion.
For example, Cecil, what you may need to look at is the debt servicing, which is at 39%, and if you look at countries like Jamaica, St. Lucia, Barbados, they spend more on debt servicing than they spend on public health expenditure.
Mm-hmm. But
I want to restricts you, regardless of.
Yeah, but I want us to come back to that because again, I want to do it against.
Yeah, because I'm not one who think that national debt. Look, the national debt is not taken. You can't isolate St. Vincent alone. It's not.
But I want to come back to it from one of your opening remarks, where you said that national debt can be bad or good. That's what you said earlier, and you also said that the debt to GDP ratio, which for us is 110 or 110%, can be bad or good.
No, I said the deficit. I was saying the deficit.
The deficit. Yeah, but let's clarify that one, the debt to the GDP ratio.
Well, it can be bad. It can be good in terms of what I think we dealt with it already in terms of what the funds were used for.
Precisely.
So if, for example, they're good investments that would eventually increase GDP and increase growth, then they're good projects. So you just can't. I don't like the idea of one just using the loans or the ratio, the debt to GDP, and say it's high and leave it like that. I think it needs to be explained in the context of what created the debt.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And where those things that created the debt, where those things exist in the context of development. Yeah. I'm sure you say that, like the port.
Which may increase your GDP, and in the long run,
precisely
work towards reducing your debt.
I think that's
it's like an investment,
But it's not necessarily the point. I want to clarify, particularly for listeners, is that a debt to the GDP of 110% is not bad necessarily. It's how you manage that and how it contributes to development.
There's a threshold, you see.
No, but there are a number of other countries, even in the East, in our jurisdiction, and of course the Eastern Caribbean, where the debt to GDP is higher. But that doesn't mean, in my view, and I want to hear your comments on it. It doesn't mean that we must just push our hands up in the air and say, well, we're dead. Because to me, it has to do with how you manage those debts.
But that is why I believe he came back and talked about, in all honesty, to the.
I mean, Prime Minister Friday,
when he spoke about from rescue to resilience and building one nation together. Because in the
but we're not back on resilience.
You're not back.
Yes, because we are trying to understand the use of the term rescue. I mean, let's be objective about it, and for the benefit of our listeners, and we have an obligation to make sure we clarify things to listeners and Vincentians in general.
But Cecil, you have to remember there's a political aspect to coining of the theme. Really. It's done as a way of as a stylistic device, not necessarily reflective of the substance. So it sounds good saying resilience to rescue to resilience. It's alliterative. It sounds good.
Politics, really.
Well, you see, except again, we have to be honest, and because it's political economy we're looking at basically. The way people, the way we use resources to create life and living and production for people, and therefore, even in the coining of the phrase, should we try to mislead people?
Well,
you know, it's a rhetorical question.
As I said, is he of the view that the projects were well prioritized? He will have his own view on that. For example, an argument is, could the port have waited? I don't know how he thinks or how his administration would think, but things like that people go for. Was some of them priorities? Could we have dealt with other things? And I'm not saying he does, I'm just saying that it could be some of the arguments raised. But I strongly believe, and then as Philbert said, you know, the small islands politicians, it's politics. Most of what they do, you know, you play politics with it. You talk about the national debt, and you play politics with that as well. All the time.
My own preference is that life is.
But it's a fact, though, that regardless of what it was spent on, the fact is that you'd have some restriction on your spending and so forth because of the. I just wanted to mention because you talk. Let us
but I want us to just complete the clarification from rescue to resilience. What would you consider from what you read and what was presented in the budget? What are those aspects that point to resilience?
To resilience, I think there are a couple of things that were mentioned that we need to look at. One of the pertinent things about the administration, and they've spoken about it numerous times in their campaigns, they've mentioned the Citizen by Investment Program. They now mentioned Development Bank, fiscal prudence, economic stabilization measures, some of which they have gone through. But I think, to be honest, they've mentioned a couple of things that would impact the marginalized. And
positively or negatively?
Positively.
What would those be? What have you picked about some of those?
Let us look at some of the major ones.
Okay.
There's one of the main ones, and I think, Cecil, we need to get it clear. I think we, to a great extent, one needs to look at, for example, you take the Citizen by Investment Program, which have been spoken about very negatively by, I would like to think, most persons. But I couldn't you just give me let me just mention something
Well, that's
about it,
yes, of course,
so that we can clear it up. There's Citizen by Investment, okay? But these days, a lot of countries are moving away from Citizen by Investment. And there's something which is quite different, what is called residency by investment, rather than Citizen by Investment. And there's a distinct difference between them. So could I just go through the difference? Because I really think we need to. The Citizen by Investment Program, basically where you would invest your money, you become a citizen of a country, okay? Basically, you're given citizenship. In the residency program, you would have where persons may invest money, but they do not become a citizen of your country. You become a resident and maybe given citizenship over a long period of time.
But isn't that what exists right now? Isn't that what exists right now?
No, some people, you pay up your money and you're given your passport and your
Where?
citizen
In
of the
St.
country.
Vincent?
You can move in.
In St. Vincent?
No, not
And the
in St.
Grenadines?
Vincent. not in St. Vincent.
Okay, all right.
I don't
No,
think
no,
we have
but
I
in
don't
as
think
much,
we can say we
the
have a
Silver.
program as such.
Yeah,
Cecil.
but in as much as you're saying,
Yeah.
you're describing
Yeah.
what you think citizen by residency means, and it's
Yeah.
different from citizen by investment. My question to you, therefore, which is what shouldn't we not acknowledge that the citizen by residence is what is obtains right now in St. Vincent and the Grenadines?
But are we using it as a fundamental way of income for the government? Is it a planned set program where we are earning money?
How do you see that particular program?
No.
No. The one you're describing, a program where we are earning money. How do you see it unfolding?
I see it where you'd have to plan, where you'd have to say, okay, I have a set program. You'd have things in place. You need to have proper due diligence. You'd need to be setting things like, what do you want out of it? How much money does you want from an investor or a prospective resident if you're going to do the resident by investment program? So that you must have things in place.
And would you say there would be a duration in terms of the length of time that you have to be in country before you become
I don't know. I don't know what the present Minister of Finance or his government, the NDP administration would look at. But I'd like to think that they would look at something which would not be under scrutiny, international scrutiny. That they would look at a proper residency by investment program.
And just to clarify, when you say proper residency, the person or persons who would qualify for such a program, they would be required to live in the country for a period of time?
You're not. Residency maintained without becoming a citizen. That's the thing. You can
but you have to live in the country.
You can live with the country, but
in the country.
But it's part of it, and it's how you want to set up your program. Because
so it means
if you make your initial investment and you come in, for example, you can be asked to pay residency fees during the time before you apply for your citizenship.
Yeah, but if, for example, you live in Pakistan, say for example, and you are applying for becoming part of the residency, or for receiving, approval for the residency program, would it require the mere fact that it says residency? Wouldn't it require you to live in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for a period of time?
But I would think so. Yes, yes. And you pay your resident fees until such time. But one of the things about the residency programs, you do not get instant citizenship. So you can be scrutinized, because a lot of the persons arguing against citizen by investment programs argue about the type of persons who are given the citizenship. And people even think that, the worst people apply for citizenship to your country, which may not be. But
so in a way, you're looking at in your conception, something like a migration program. You migrate from Pakistan, say, to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to become a resident. That's what you're suggesting?
Well, the persons are allowed to maintain the original citizenship.
Oh, yeah. You maintain it.
Yeah.
But you, for a period of time, for a period of your life, it would require you moving to St. Vincent and the Grenadines to reside. Isn't that by definition? That's what it means.
Yeah. But I'm not sure how the program would be set up and how.
I know, but if you're calling it a citizen by residence, it means you have to be resident in the country, which is St. Vincent and Grenadines. So I'm asking you according to your own conception of it.
Yeah,
is that what you?
Once you give your investment and you pump money into what is required of you, I'm not too sure if they may ask you to physically be present. Because
then it's not a residency program.
But you pay
paying, you have to live in the country to become a resident. I think it's implied.
It's implied
in the formulation of this term.
Okay.
But anyway,
it's a different program, and different countries have different program. I am not going to bash the citizen if we go back and call it that by program.
No, we're not talking about bashing it. I don't want us to bash anything. I just want us to look at the logic.
There's a lot of people who have, in my view, has a misconception of it.
Right.
Because I have argued in favor of it years ago. And I thought we could have, maybe our economy could have helped fundamentally, could have been in transforming our economy. I do believe so. And we have to take into consideration, for example, if you take St. Kitts Nevis, where basically it started, it came out in 1984, I think, after St. Kitts Nevis got the independence and moved away from Britain. It was a means of obtaining further funds, additional funds. But in those days, things were different. You had not so much into money laundering and so forth as popular as now. So, but that's basically the idea. But I think people.
But I don't think that.
I think people are getting a wrong idea that it has to be a citizen investment program where people invest money, be given citizenship. There's no proper due diligence, and I think people are getting the wrong impression of it.
Well, it is what it is what happened. The history you can't read. As an accountant, you know that. History is history. As an auditor, as an accountant, you look at the track that has been created.
But take, for example, the one in Grenada.
Yeah.
Grenada CBI program stands out from those in the other Caribbean islands. It has what is called an E2 visa treaty with the United States, which enables the investor to easily obtain residency within the United States of America. So it's how you want to set up your program. So it's not a one.
And how would you judge the experience of Grenada with that program?
Well, for sure, they're not under serious international scrutiny. For example, they're not scrutinized a lot by the United States because of that treaty and so forth.
And what kind of capital have they been able to realize from?
I haven't gone into their figures, to be honest.
Because that's important.
But it must have contributed. They have maintained it. It must have contributed.
Yeah, but we need to know the figures. For example, in as you know, you perhaps know, in the case of St. Kitts Nevis, they've been doing it for over 40 years. And from my looking at the figures, it seems that over $4 billion is easy. It's come out of that. But how much of that would you think was stayed back in St. Kitts Nevis? It seems to me not much. Less than a quarter of that.
Well, again, that depends on whom. The government? What did they do with it? And how was it spent?
Okay.
So that's why I said serious policies, serious departments, whatever, would have to be set up to deal with your citizen investment program, proper due diligence and so forth on applicants, and it has to be done not in any willy-nilly way. We have to be careful how it is done. It's not something we would want not to look at. I really do not support people who simply dash it at all.
But you have confidence in the citizen by residency.
Yes, I believe we should go somewhere down some route, but don't.
What I'm hearing is citizen by investment, but part of the criteria is a residency requirement to qualify.
Which is what DaSilva is saying. The residency, which is citizen by residency, is that what they call it? But it would mean anybody who wants to take that up would have to migrate from their country for a while to be resident in in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The period of time is what is going to count.
There's another program in one of the countries where you actually require that you invest in government bonds and so forth. That's a requirement. So it's really lending a way of getting funds by selling your bonds.
But let me ask you,
they're different programs. They're really
what kind of
programs.
capital do you see being realized from that program?
No, I won't be able to answer that. It all depends on how You mark how you market the program.
No, but if you're advocating,
what's the investment requirement? Are they going to ask people for $1 million? Are they going to ask them for $500,000?
But if
So
you're advocating that,
I think that would influence it.
Yeah, but if you're advocating that over CBI, you must be entertaining in your mind what kind of figures you're looking at, because it may not make sense to even consider it.
Yeah, but I am saying I would like to think. I am not one of the policymakers, Cecil.
I know.
I would like to think that that's part of what they would look at. That rather than just what.
But there are two things. We're looking at the national debt, and we're looking also at the deficit.
Yeah.
So the question is, would you think a citizen by residency program will impact positively?
It could impact the economy. It could be, as I said, I believe we sort of missed the boat a bit years ago. And I believe years ago it could have been transformative. Now it's under a lot of international scrutiny, so you would have to depend on the format of the program, as I said. I don't know what the administration would come up with in terms of what they're going to implement. But as I said, I just think we'd have to wait and see. But it could have an impact. It could have an impact.
Okay. One of the things, the other thing you mentioned in terms of the resilience is the introduction of a national bank. How do you...
A development bank.
Sorry, National Development Bank. I'm sorry. Yeah, how do you see it unfolding, and what difference would it make?
I think, and this is my view on it, it's my take on it, that the commercial banks have certain industry, certain sector that they've deemed to be high risk. And I think, secondly, that's one point. And secondly, it's the point of small businesses. Small businesses, I think, ought to be, I think that there needs to be some sort of capital where people can obtain capital easier, have access to.
So you're saying currently, even as you speak, small businesses don't have sufficient access to capital.
No, I'm saying no. I take, for example, in Antigua, I think when a young professional comes back in Antigua, that they're given certain loans without collateral. I think that has been set up to, I can't recall the money. But I think here you need to have security, you need to,
you mean as far as the commercial banks are concerned?
In terms of commercial banks.
Yeah, you have to have security and so on.
So I think, I'm not saying that you lend your money anyway, but I think small businesses, I think they need some help in terms of capital.
So you see a development bank as conceived or conceptualized, not requiring collateral?
No, I'm not saying they won't need collateral, but it can help in areas that, for example, agriculture. Our country, it can be deemed or it's quite an agricultural sector, large agricultural sector. I think that the bank sees, I don't know how many of them, but a lot of the commercial banks sees agriculture as a risk area. See small businesses like the hairdressers and others, and I can tell you, as risk areas. So there are certain areas where they may not lend or it's difficult to obtain loans. And I am saying that there need to be something where people can be assisted. I once advocated why maybe a fund that government can put aside to act as collateral for persons, small business to get loan. It doesn't mean that you need to give it in a willy-nilly manner. But small businesses could be in trouble.
When you say get loans, you mean from the present arrangement?
Maybe something secured by a government fund or something.
Yeah, but with in the absence of a development bank, or are you talking about the current situation?
Maybe in the absence of a commercial
development
bank, and should have been done. You have to realize, there are a lot of small businesses that can be, if they expanded. One of our serious problems in St. Vincent is unemployment. I think the Minister of Finance puts it not too sure if the figures are right, but at around 40-41%.
Now we could
I
come
know-
on. We
I know some
we
year-
had
I know some years
no, but
ago-
let's clarify that point before we go on,
Mm.
because it's not correct to say that the unemployment present is 40%. No, it isn't.
Well,
If you go on the basis, and we had Mr. Haynes in here, CEO of NIS, about 2 weeks ago, and
I'm
we
telling
touched
you
on
what
that.
he puts it at, what he puts it.
No,
at.
no, but we have
Yeah.
a responsibility to share with our listeners a more believable figure. Never people I see on Facebook and people put 40% unemployment, but let's be realistic.
Yeah.
If you have a labor force and people who are into labor and would call in and make the clarification of about 40 something thousand, 46, 47 thousand, and you have a registration on the NIS, sorry, INS, made me sound like what's his name, but of about 43, 44%. And Mr. Haynes did say he gave the number. I don't remember the particular number now.
Yeah.
Would you still go if that many people are contributing towards the NIS? Would you say that they have
No.
this 40% unemployment?
It sounds pretty high, yeah, I must say. But some years ago, I think the World Bank had put it and they had said between the age of, I think, 19 and 27 or something like that, that it was around 26% or so forth in that age group. You know, and that even that is pretty high. But
to go back to the main point that you were raising, though, in terms of how a development bank may contribute towards the livelihoods of young people.
In the budget, they mention it as a focus explicitly on micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises,
Right.
startup and youth-led enterprises,
Mm-hmm.
agriculture, fisheries, agro-processing, and food security,
Mm-hmm.
tourism-linked domestic entrepreneurship, and into fisheries, the blue economy, creative industries, and the digital economy. That's the areas that they have emphasized in the presentation.
All right. Again, for the benefit of our listeners, there are some, those 4 pillars that you mentioned them as contained in the budget presentation. I was wondering if you could clarify for our listeners. One, the blue economy, what does that consist of? And 2, the new economy. What essentially are those things? And how, in practical terms, on the ground, in terms of having young people become involved, what do they mean for young people?
Well, the budget mentioned the blue economy. I think talking about institutional strengthening and fisheries reform within that sector.
But what are the activities that young people get into? That's what I'm trying to get at. What are the activities, the actual activities?
The actual activities, for example, you have mentioned infrastructure released to Braxa for renovations of the fisheries headquarters. I think that they're hoping to do work in the other. I'm quoting from
from the budget.
Of course, conservation of fisheries stock, the increased regulation to improve fish stock and ensure long-term sustainability, partnerships to develop a marine spatial plan for exclusive economic zone, development, strategic investments in coastal livelihoods, for example, the barley blackfish facilities, and I think $2.8 million have been allocated to that. Bequia Fish Market, $2.1 million. The National Fisheries Enhancement, Northern Grenadines and mainland recovery, through the volcanic eruption emergency project and so forth.
But those are some of those things you mentioned are actual structural things, the physical structure. But I was more questioning, because it mentioned the extent of empowering young people, how in those facilities would young people be how would they feature?
I know I know there's some agricultural education mentioned. I've read agricultural education in schools and so forth. But with the employment, I don't think you can read through the budget and see and particularly or specifically talk about how they're going to. I won't be able to tell
Okay.
you that part.
But the only reason I'm asking is that
Yeah.
those two areas are mentioned as
But
two of the four platforms, pillars.
I would like to think that they're getting at actually improving some improvement in the fisheries in terms of reform.
So improvement in fisheries, we talk about the structures themselves, the facilities. Does it also mean that young people would be assisted in terms of receiving loans or grants to buy bigger boats and better equipment, those kind of things?
I've not seen it specifically addressed here. I did not see it specifically addressed here. If you're talking about reforms, I don't think they've expanded on those reforms for me to tell.
But I would imagine if you're talking about the blue economy as a pillar, which is what the budget talks about and which is what the government is pushing, then it seems to me that you have to make it real in terms of where are the areas that young people are going to be able to take advantage and earn money, earn a livelihood. To me, that's what it means in the final analysis.
When it's talking about, they also mentioned that partner with NGOs and so forth with developing policies. I think they would get into things like data. I think they're 3 months in office.
No. DaSilva, let's not be trivial about this. I'm talking about what it. No, but it's not going to about 3 months in office. The point is that there's a document which we have read, and you have copies of it, pages from it there. And if the things are mentioned, we need to know what is intended for young people, because you read the statement.
For example, I think it would have been touched on. If you talk about Otley Hall Marina, for example, refurbishment of that shipyard, and to them it remains a priority. Then there must be training and there must be employment in that.
So
you mentioned it. It's all about implementing, because if it's effectively implementing, the Otley Hall Marina is refurbished and get going, then definitely you need training and employment.
So you're saying
it's
that
implied.
That is going to be a source of employment for young people. That's what you're saying.
I would think things
right.
like that.
So that's what I'm asking.
If you're going to try and increase, for example, and expand in the fishery sector, then of course employment would come in there. For example, national fisheries enhancement, new centers at Lowman's Bay. So there are some new centers as well. New centers at Lowman's Bay and Shipping Bay will drive food security and rural employment. So don't
you think it would be fair for people to say how young people are going to fit into that? Because one of the things he quoted from the budget speech is that young people would be empowered. And how are they going to be empowered? Don't you think it's a fair question to ask?
It is. It is a fair question to ask.
Yeah. Okay. And so it's not a question of 2 or 3 years or 2 or 3 months or 1 year, 10 years. It doesn't mean, to me, it's not that. It's a question is things are stated, and you would want people to know, young people to know how they're going to fit into it.
How they're going to fit into
it. Yeah. There may be opportunities for them. They need to know what areas those opportunities are going to exist. Yeah, I would think so.
You would think so. Okay.
Peter, you coming
in? When I'm ready.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure you don't you don't leave me alone to engage Mr. DaSilva. But again, Mr. DaSilva, really, what is your understanding?
It's a policy document, Cecil, and every nitty-gritty thing is not going to be mentioned.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I understand that, but policy implies programs and projects.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to make that clear. And it implies also activities coming out of those things.
Yes.
All right. So the new economy, what is your understanding of the new economy. I honestly don't know what is meant, but could you assist? And I believe some of our listeners don't know.
Let me just make sure I have it correct. I think it's let me find it first, sorry.
Let me just tell our listeners.
So the new economy, yes. I think, as mentioned in the budget, is basically addresses, and if I could just quote from it, if our traditional sectors are the roots of our economic tree, the new economy represents the fresh branches reaching out toward the limitless possibilities of the digital and creative age. So the digital pivot is already visible in our labor data. And they went on to mention, to accelerate this, we're establishing a national innovation hub. This campus will serve as an incubator for entrepreneurship, providing our youth with high demand ICT certifications that command global wages. Through the National Development Bank, we'll provide the startup capital for digital entrepreneurs, ensuring that a lack of collateral does not mean a lack of opportunity for our big minds. So I'm just trying to establish a cultural industries of development fund, a youth guarantee pledge. I repeat the sacred pledge, and to the end of it, the youth guarantee pledge. By the end of this term, every young person in this country will have access to a job. But to as you mentioned, talking about how many and things, I don't think you'd see it in the budget. To be honest.
No. I was asking what is meant by the use of the term new economy.
New economy.
Can we expect anything new from what exists currently?
Yeah. Okay. But they've mentioned, as I said, a digital revolution in terms of young people and dealing with, I believe, ICT and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I honestly, I'm no wiser when you talk about the new economy.
Well, it's basically, I'm seeing it as a digital, as the digital times and a creative age, and yeah.
All right, so we're still on the question, and I want to go back to the question of the Development Bank.
Yeah.
From what I was able to hear from the budget, it's the budget debate. It's capitalized by a sum of $500,000. From your practice as an accountant, as an auditor,
I haven't seen capitalization of 500,000. I haven't read that in it though.
It was debated in the estimate, and it was said a number of times.
Well, if that is correct, I don't know. I have not seen it. Cecil, I have not seen a 500,000. You sure it's not a $5 million?
I know it's 500,000.
That is the figure that has been bandied about.
Not 500,000.
500,000.
500,000 is.
I can't see 500,000 being part of
well, not a part to capitalize
the National
Bank, the National Development Bank.
No, it's not mentioned here. That figure.
No, but yeah, from your own practice as an accountant, as an auditor.
But if that
what
is
would
the
you
figure,
think?
I don't think you can capitalize a development bank with $500,000. It's just plain and simple.
What kind of figure you again from your practice? What kind of figure you would adequately capitalize an institution of that nature?
You need some millions of dollars if you want to properly start a development bank. What kind of projects? Even if you mention capital, you need to capitalize.
And by good, you mean what amount you're talking
about? It would have to be millions of dollars. I can't put my hand.
10 million, 100 million.
The extent of it. I don't know what plans and how much, to what extent, and they would want to be financing industries and so forth. But it definitely not the $500,000. It's better you give the $500,000 to an existing financial, to an existing, because of $500,000. If somebody wants to go into, for example, agro processing, you might need more than that.
Not might. I do know because I was part of the experience. You need millions, literally millions, just for the equipment.
Yeah. So it's not. As I said, though, I have not seen it, so I can't.
No, but it's in the estimate.
It would need to be properly.
It was mentioned in the estimate. And in fact, it was questioned during the debate.
It would need to be properly capitalized.
Yeah.
If it is something that is going to be feasible, something workable, definitely not $500,000. You need a good 20, 30, 40 million dollars.
Actually, need more than that.
Thing to capitalize it properly. But maybe I don't know. Maybe if they mention that, maybe they're getting investors and that's their input. But it can't be. It can't be a 500.
You mean in input from the government or from investors?
Maybe other shareholders, but definitely you can't talk about a $500 investment.
No, but I heard also the Prime Minister saying,
if you want, then rename it. Don't call it a development bank at all.
But that's what it's called in the estimate and in the budget.
Okay.
And I heard the Prime Minister in his explaining saying it is not meant to make money, to make a surplus. I heard him saying that, and we can double check that if you. But he did say that.
Because the same point I'm mentioning, he did mention it, that this budget, and I'll actually quote it for you. I remember I was telling you that it's needed. You were asking about it said the budget therefore places, and I'm quoting from the budget, under the heading National Development Bank. This budget therefore places deliberate emphasis on broadening access to finance, particularly for those productive sectors that are consistently identified as too risky by traditional commercial bank lending institutions, despite their proven capacity to generate employment, exports, and income. And that is why I was telling you, it's a good idea to have a development bank, but not, as you mentioned, if it was mentioned, not with a 500 capitalization, not with $500,000 at all.
Okay. Access to capital is good for young people.
For small businesses on the whole.
Well, small business as a whole. But in particular, to create livelihood opportunities for young people.
The other important thing, though, that I think we should mention is the VAT.
Yes, we're going to come to that. We're going to come to that, yes. But go ahead as you raise it.
I think we have to be careful how we touch VAT. I always talk about it. And if you're going to reduce it, you have to be...
DaSilva, before you go on, could you explain to our listeners what is the concept of VAT? Where is it applied? And so
well, VAT is basically a value-added tax based on your purchases. Right now it is 16%. It is charged on particular goods and services. There's some goods that are not VATable, they're exempted from VAT, but there's some when you buy, you pay your value-added tax when you purchase in the supermarkets or in the stores. And
so basically, the point of sale.
It's a tax, yes.
Yeah, but I've been hearing mention made of VAT at the custom as well. Yeah. When items come in, So how is that explained?
What?
VAT, you pay importers of some commodities pay VAT at the custom on their goods.
At the customs on the goods once you import them.
Right.
Yes.
But once the items get into the store, point of sale, you also pay VAT.
Yep. You have to look at the VAT. There's an important point I did not mention. When you sell, if you're registered for VAT, when you purchase goods, okay, there's an offset in between what you purchased and your sales.
Mm-hmm.
So I buy
That's the markup, is it?
No, it's not a markup. That's different from your markup.
Mm-hmm.
The VAT is when you buy goods to sell over, right? Or that as you purchase the goods, you'd pay VAT. If I have a business, I purchase goods, I would charge you VAT, but I paid VAT. When I sell the goods, there's an offsetting between the purchases and the sales. You're getting me? And you pay over to the government the difference. So,
Okay.
so, yeah. But that's basically how it works. There's a threshold.
And that difference is calculated as what, 16%?
16% is what you charge on the goods you're selling.
Right.
Yes. But it's different from a markup. It has nothing to do with your markup. It should be put on the goods. Some people have been saying that they take advantage of it, that people mark up the goods because they know it is vatable and so forth. That you'd have evidence to.
No, but what I wanted to address is really not so much the markup idea, but the difference or the relationship between VAT at the custom when you buy and import and VAT at the point of sale at the supermarket or in the store, where you have to pay 16%. You get me?
Yeah, I have you. It's trying to put it into my mind to explain it to.
Because people, let's deal with it then.
Yeah.
Let's just go back, make it simple.
The VAT
at the point of
when
sale.
you import the goods,
Yes.
okay, the VAT is separated. You're not supposed to use for example, you buy a car, you import a car to sell for 50,000. You pay, let us say you pay a VAT on it. You're not using the VAT as a cost, That cannot be a cost to add on your markup. I think that's the point you want. Yeah, that you cannot use that. I know there are some small businesses that did it and they become not very competitive because they have to remove that. Because that purchase, that VAT becomes, you basically pay over the difference, as I was saying, what you're selling. So that's not a cost. The VAT is not an expense to the businessman.
So the 16% VAT that we're referring to is a VAT that you pay at where you buy, point of sale.
Yeah,
is that correct?
That's an act.
Right.
That's in the VAT Act. How much you charge.
So that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
So that is going to be reduced, or that is being considered to be reduced.
Yeah, that is what would be reduced. Yeah.
From 16% to 13%.
Did they mention a figure? I don't.
Yeah. It's been mentioned all the time.
I think they campaigned with the figure. I don't think it's mentioned in the budget what figure that would be.
Oh, okay.
I think they're thinking about reducing VAT, particularly on the
electricity
and goods, basic goods. But I don't think they've put a figure in the budget as to by how much. But I was mentioning the point that it's something that has to be carefully looked at, because if you're going to reduce your VAT, you're going to reduce your revenue base on the VAT. Your revenue base, and you'd need to somehow get it back somewhere. Because it's not the fact is you have a deficit budget in terms of on your current account, your revenue is less than your current expenditure. So if you're reducing your VAT, you need to where's that extra income? Where is it going to come from? Is it from your citizen investment program? Are you going to, because in no way the budget speaks about an increase in other taxes. So if we reduce it, can we reduce it? But that's what you would have to be carefully looked at. And that's why I was bringing it up, because the reduction, and I guess it is reduced because you want to increase the disposable income of people so that they can have more money in their hand to spend. I think that's the objective of reducing it.
But if you're saying that you can't see where the replacement fund would come from.
Well, the budget did not mention anything about increases, taxes, alternative taxes. So you'd have to basically,
you assume it will.
Although Cecil, in the pages of the budget, he spoke about fiscal prudence, where you cutting back on expenses and so forth.
So that is the exact point I was coming to. Fiscal prudence, discipline.
Fiscal prudence.
Yeah, fiscal prudence, discipline, and some other terms were used.
Yeah.
But how do you arrive at fiscal prudence?
Well,
Again, from your practice.
I guess basically it's spending less.
Oh, and
Trying
the
to-
question, how do you spend less?
How do you spend less? Yes.
There are some options. Well, what and there are options from being able to spend less?
Well, there are a lot of implications because if you spend less as well, if government expenditures are going to reduce, then you're going to basically on what you're going to spend less on. Are you cutting back on what? And therefore, if you're cutting back on your expenses, you're reducing that sort of circulation of money into your economy. So there's some implications there of cutting back on government expenditures as well.
But again, I'm
But
asking you,
that's
what are the
again-
possible areas that government can cut back?
I don't know what I think in the budget, do they have mentioned certain areas of cutting back? I think I saw some of them. But
Well, I
think it
do
has to
notice.
I think it's hinting on cutting back on waste and that sort.
Yeah, well, that's what
And
the
being-
whole question
and
of
being prudent, yeah.
being prudent is about.
Yeah.
And well,
So it may not necessarily being things like cutting back on wages or cutting back on salaries. So it might be looking at areas where you can save.
would you think it means cutting back on the number of employees?
No, I don't think so either.
But what gives
Because-
you that assurance?
Well, if you're mentioning fiscal prudence, the savings must come somewhere. I don't think they have been specific in terms of that fiscal.
Well, we
prudence,
just went through how do you
unless
effect
you're
savings?
insinuating that there were.
I'm asking,
certain-
really, I'm asking.
No, I'm saying where maybe you have seen areas where there were basically resources not properly allocated, and you want to
Okay.
maybe reduce them.
In his contribution to the debate on the budget, the Minister of Health, the Honorable Daniel Cummins, made mention of the modern medical facility, which he described as a problem, a huge problem. He did mention that they're thinking of, or even they have decided to talk with other partners, people who offer the same services, companies or entities that offer the same services. Does that imply, in your view, a cutback or privatization of those services, or some of them?
That has not. I know
That was mentioned.
I know
That was mentioned.
I know it was mentioned. I heard it. I think it was campaigned.
No. It was mentioned
but
in
if
the
you're going
debate.
to- if
It
you're
was
going
mentioned
to-
in the debate.
But
The
if
Honorable
you're,
Daniel
going to have,
Cummins.
if you're going to have Cecil, I'm not sure. I didn't quite listen to it.
Right. If I had the cut, I would have
But
played
he-
it back.
but,
But he did mention it.
But if you're going to have a hospital and you're going to maybe have additional clinics or private
No. He
institutions
mentioned
offering
specifically
Uh-huh.
the modern medical facility.
Yeah. And
At Georgetown.
privatizing it.
Not it. Some of the services.
Some of the services.
For example, the hemodialysis was what was mentioned.
Okay.
So what does that imply in your, again, from your practice and from your experience?
I don't think I can specifically
All right.
zoom in on that. You'll have to maybe get your,
Okay. Do
maybe
you
get your
sense?
health minister.
Do you sense?
to
Do you
explain.
sense a retreat from of the role of the state, the government, in covering some of these services? To the extent where the Prime Minister, for example.
I haven't got that from reading through the budget.
Okay, have you read the part where the Prime Minister talked about placing greater emphasis on the private sector?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
What does that imply in your
But
from your practice?
is it I don't think he has expanded on it a lot
You're right.
in the budget
Yeah.
for me to make give an opinion on it, a proper opinion on it. But I would like to think maybe I don't know in which sector, but I'd like to think he may want to maybe, as you said, give maybe allow the private sector to be involved in some areas. The areas I'm not too sure about. Years ago, people talking about privatization of VINLEC and so forth. I think that's out the window. It's a backward thing to talk about. Because government.
Well, one thing they did say for sure, the Prime Minister said it.
Yeah.
They're going to in terms of the Cuban medical professionals who are here, they're going to put I'm not sure the exact word, but a halt.
Yeah. But again, is that coming because of what is happening in where it is, St. Lucia?
Antigua?
Or Antigua?
I don't know, but I just want to be objective about.
Is it linked to that?
But is it coming? That's the point. First of all, is it coming? What form is it going to take?
I won't be able to answer that.
But we're commenting on the budget. We're looking at the budget.
Yeah, but it's question that one may formulate if you read through the budget. But you're not. I don't think enough information is here for somebody to interpret something like that. For example, what sector are you going to look at if you're going to maybe have the private sector play a more important role? What are the sectors? I don't think it's quite clearly spelled out.
Also, you think there's going to be a retreat of government's role from, say, housing, the area of housing?
I don't think so. I think government would still have to play a particular role in housing, specific role for in particular for low-income houses. I don't think you can leave low-income housing to the private sector. I think you need to reorganize, do some reorganization maybe of housing. But I don't think that can go to the private sector where you simply ignore it. But in fact, I think they have placed emphasis on I think somewhere in the budget, speaking about reorganizing houses and actually allocated funds to assist.
No, the amount of fund allocated in budget is reduced significantly.
Yeah.
In fact, a number of speakers drew attention to that.
Yes.
Former Prime Minister did. Senator James did, and Senator Peters did as well.
Maybe they have singled out that as part of the fiscal prudence in terms of reducing an expenditure in that particular area.
Okay.
The impact, you need to see what happens, but maybe that's one area of their fiscal prudence. Cutting back. But there are not a lot of areas where they have specifically mentioned where they're going to. I think it was generally mentioned that there'll be some fiscal prudence, cutting back where.
But you think those areas, the cut back in those areas would be enough to offset the deficit?
That won't happen like that. I don't think it can happen like that. The deficit would have to be handled over a period of time, and the national debt, it's not going to come overnight.
No, I'm not talking about the national debt. I'm talking about the deficit in this budget, in this year's budget, in the 2026 budget, not the national debt. Obviously, as you're saying, the national debt would have to be dealt over a period of time. But in terms of this year's budget, there's a deficit of $105 million.
If the budget for it and this is what they're hoping to spend and this is the revenue they may earn, then you're going to have a deficit budget.
But I'm asking you if the fact that you point out that housing is maybe one area, the area of health, maybe another area. So I'm asking you the question. Would those sums be enough to offset, or what impact would they have on reducing the size of the deficit? You think? I mean, you can't give precise, but I'm just posing, because we're discussing the budget and it has to be discussed in those terms. It has to be discussed in those terms. But you'd want to think, that's what I'm saying, that the figures budgeted, they would have budgeted for the figures that they're hoping to earn and budgeting for the figures that they're spending. I don't think within the budget here is a plan to reduce the deficit. I think I don't think within the budget would have been the plans and what they're cutting back on, or ought to be what they would have been planning on. So no, I don't think. So if that is the case, one can assume if your argument is
Yeah, but we said it earlier, deficits would lead to increase in national
deficit.
debt. But
and also it may have an implication for the following year.
So you would have
following budget.
Yeah, it's a long-term thing. You'd have to work on.
No, we're not talking about the national debt, DaSilva. We're talking about the deficit.
Yeah,
yes.
But that's what I'm saying. You'd have to work on your deficits in the future if you're hoping to reduce eventually your national debt and the GDP, the debt to GDP ratio.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long term. That's why, in fact, it's due to be. That's why it is set. I think 2035. I think it was once.
Yeah, but that's the national debt.
Yeah.
Not debt.
That's your national debt.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was posing the question about this year's deficit, budget deficit. Because we're talking about the 2026 budget.
I'm telling you that the figure budgeted is expected income and expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And built in those figures, the fact that you have a deficit. You'd get a deficit on what they're going to spend.
Mm-hmm.
Those are figures actually there for spending. If they're going to, you'd like to think that those cutbacks would have taken place already in their planning, if you follow what I'm saying. So they plan to reduce this and reduce that, must be part of the budget presentation.
And after you reduce this and reduce that, you're still left with $105 million.
That's
what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think I've asked enough questions. So we can now open up to persons who wish to ask their own question can call now, or if they wish to contribute to explaining anything that I may have put to you in a kind of confusing way. So let's not, except Peter, do you want to come in? Okay, so let's invite our persons who wish to call. They can call now. We have our first call here on the screen. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Cecil. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alfred.
Hey, good day. Cecil, you've been having an interesting discussion. I want to say, though, it's a pity. It's sad that this national exercise, and I know why it is, but it is sad that it has to be discussed solely in the context of politics. The implication for that is you question any of it, or you oppose any of it. It is quite likely that it is taken that it's an opposition to the government. And sometimes that's why you don't get open discussions on the budget. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, we are listening and hearing loud and clear.
Yes. I want to make a general statement about the budget and my disappointment with it and the way it is presented. The budget provided a lot of policy, a lot of objectives, but in many cases, the actions to achieve these objectives are not very clear. And it came out in the discussion that you were having here this morning. I traditionally, when I listen to a budget, whether it's here or it's elsewhere, after all of this text and presentation, background and so forth, towards the end, there's a section that clearly the fiscal measures are stated. I did not get it in this budget. I am not saying fiscal measures were not presented. They were presented throughout the budget. But at the end, or somewhere, it would have been quite helpful if you have a set of the set of fiscal measures that you're pursuing during the budget period. And just to be clear, what we mean by fiscal measures, we're talking about taxation and expenditure. So how you're going to spend and how you're going to acquire revenue to meet that spending so that you can influence the national economy. In the budget, there are a number of contradictions. Let me give you a simple one. The government is going to put in place conservation, and I'm always for conservation measures, especially when it relates to the environment. They're going to put in conservation measures in terms of the marine environment. So they're going to establish 2 marine conservation areas in the Grenadines. One around Isle of Cat and another one somewhere, I think not very far from there. I support that. But at the same time, the Minister of Agriculture is talking about building cottages in a very environmental sensitive area, that area that connects Greg's to Mariaco. That area is very environmentally sensitive. And to put persons to live up there, and I'm talking from experience, you will expose and I'm talking about visitors, but people generally, but you'll be putting St. Vincent in the way of danger. And I will not go into it at this time, but those who are familiar with the situation and that particular area, because that area that the minister mentioned connects Greg's to Montreal. The Blue Mountain connects Greg's to Montreal. Very environmentally sensitive area, very important for St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And Lansford, are you talking about the Montreal watershed area?
Yes. Well, Tarboro is part of the overall Montreal watershed.
Okay.
But yes. Yeah. With respect to the VAT, Cecil, VAT, as the name suggests, can be considered as a production tax, but it ends up as a consumption tax. This is why it is so. VAT is collected at a stage whenever goods and services change hands. The amount that the person who is providing the good or service should be paying is what they added, the value that they added to that product, that good or that service. So when the goods come in at the custom, VAT is paid on it, on the value of the goods at that time, because that is the value added up. All of it is value added up to that point. When the importer trades it, VAT is collected again. But the VAT really should be collected on the difference between what it came in for and what the trader sells it for. So that's why it's called a value added. But the point that you were pointing out, Cecil, is that the VAT is computed on the whole amount that the trader sells it for. And then the amount that was paid at the customs is subtracted. So eventually when it gets to the consumer doesn't have any way of setting off the VAT. So the consumer pay the entire amount. And that's why I said the concept suggests it's a production tax, but it's really a consumption tax. Mr. DaSilva is quite correct. VAT is a significant contributor to the revenues of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the government revenue. And if you're going to reduce the amount you collect, by reducing the rates, you have to find some way. It's either you're going to give up some of your expenditure or you have to collect the revenue elsewhere to meet that expenditure that you gave up. Importantly though, the government say they will conduct a study before they decide what rates they're going to, by how much they will reduce the tax. And I will add now, during that study they will decide whether or not they will reduce the tax at all. Because when you do a study, and especially if you do a comprehensive study, it should lay all of the facts on the table, including the effect any reduction would have on the national economy. So we have to await the outcome of that study. Cecil, with respect to the national debt, and a lot of emphasis has been placed on the national debt. But one of the things I never hear anybody mention, maybe except for the leader of the opposition, is that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, during the period where we're talking about this massive increase in the debt to the GDP ratio, came at a time when GDP had serious effects from nature. So GDP was either stagnated or reduced. If you take 2020, 2021, when we had the COVID-19 situation, at one point the economy came to a virtual halt.
Not just COVID, but also the eruption. That was quite significant.
Right. And then the hurricane in 2024.
Yeah, Lance, that's an important point because you increase it, you have to spend a lot of money, but okay.
Well, even before we go to the spending, Kirk, you're talking about the actual reduction in the GDP.
In the GDP, yes.
And then, as you say, it requires a lot more expenditure in those periods. So the deficit that you're seeing now is not solely from recklessness. It's not solely from the expansion in capital expenditure. But it has to do, to a large extent, and I'm talking about the period since 2020, with the natural disasters that we had to recover from. And we are recovering from it up to today. In terms of the fiscal measures that are spread across the budget, a significant amount of it has to do with construction, and particularly the construction of roads. And I include in that maintenance. I am happy for the expansion in road construction and or maintenance. It's one of the issues I disagreed with the ULP administration over the years. And to me, it was not about the money they spent on construction. It was the approach to do it. I don't think, and I've said it publicly before, I don't think we will get in the most for the money we spent on...
Value for your money.
Value for the money. I don't think so, the way it was organized. I think what the government spent on roads provided too much profit to the private sector because it was done in a particular way where roads were maintained and constructed by projects. So you give a man $3 million to construct how many miles of road? Maybe a mile. Mm-hmm. And I said, a part of that, I was about to say significant, but let me just keep it to a part. A part of that money is profit. I believe more could have been had if we had reorganized BRAXA in a particular way, where BRAXA is able to respond They have a system of ongoing maintenance. So you have teams that are properly equipped with mechanical equipment and so forth to do modern day road maintenance on the major highways. And then you have other teams, as we had in the old days, that responded to certain needs that arise as we go along with respect to the road. Now, how is this emphasis on roads going to impact the economy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? We are left to be seen, because we all know that we have serious constraints on labor and otherwise when it comes to construction. In the economy generally, we have a serious constraints both on labor and on capital. Where road maintenance is concerned, there's a lot of planning. Let me just look at it simple. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. Roads have to be designed and all of that if you're going to do it properly by engineers. I will love to see how many of these roads, not that I'm hoping that they're not done, but I will love to see at the end of the year how many of these roads that were named that were going to be constructed. I mean, the budget was delivered over 4 hours, Cecil. So to go through it can take a lot of time. I don't think you're to an hour and a half here can really do justice to it. I want to say one more thing, and then I'll leave the line for the persons who would like to contribute. The issue of agriculture and using agriculture as a pillar for economic development in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have to look at that carefully. Any one of you gentlemen in St. Vincent, in the studio today, can point me to a parcel of land in St. Vincent that is owned by one entity, whether it's an individual, a family, or a corporate enterprise, a business, that can sustainably provide agriculture activities. Can any one of you point me to any such parcel of land in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? In other words, can you point me to a parcel of land that the owner can farm it for a year and sustain a reasonable workforce all year round and make a profit? I mean, essentially talking about economies of scale. I don't know that we have in St. Vincent and the Grenadines sufficient land, and land that is owned by one entity, that economies of scale would allow them to provide activities to sustain that farm. I am all for the agricultural industry, production in the agricultural sector. We have to be careful what we set our nationals up to in terms of the expectation. We are not going back to the days of banana or even our root as a monocrop, where the whole country produced that product, and you have a aggregator. In the case of the banana industry, Banana Growers Association, Geese et al., aggregate the product and sells it overseas. So we have to be careful what we set. The agriculture sector, the agriculture industry, has to support other sectors locally whether it's the accommodation restaurant sector, meaning the tourism industry. That's where agriculture comes in. The blue economy, Cecil, you guys struggling to come up with the definition. But I think everything that relates to the sea, to the marine environment.
I think we struggle with the other pillar, one that is just
The new economy.
The new economy.
Yes. The new economy, at one point they call it the creative economy. But the creative industry, which is all of the cultural issues, the carnival, the art, the craft, as well as things that are done online. That's where the digital part comes in, Kirk. Things that are done online. So you have people who can create things online and earn from it. You have persons who can work online, work for companies in United States, Russia, any part of the world where there's an internet connection.
The other thing that, just to mention, and maybe you can voice your input on it, is the fact that we do not have a proper land use program as yet. And where housing are being used built on agricultural lands and so forth. I think that's an important point. But we do not have one. We do not have a proper land use program. Yeah,
I agree with you. But I am conjecturing that even with one now, the issue has gone so far that it will become difficult to take our agriculture. I think it's agriculture you're referring to that is suffering from that lack of land use.
It would eventually suffer tremendously from it.
I'm saying it is suffering now. The issue now is not that we don't have lands, but the lands have been so disaggregated that you can't produce successfully commercially. So you can do a lot of agriculture, but it must be geared primarily to satisfying local demand, cutting out imports where possible. To me, that is how the agriculture has to be targeted and approached at this point in time. To look back and say at one point in time, agriculture used to contribute 20-25% to our GDP, and now it is only contributing 4-5%. Don't ever expect agriculture, because when agriculture was contributing 24% to our GDP, in economic terms, it was a very inefficient industry. And I'm talking about when you relate, inefficient when you relate production to the market, because that's why we lost the market. There were persons who were doing it, producing it for less than we can. And this is not a criticism of those who produce it here, because those who produce it here do so under different circumstances. As I keep insisting, it was smaller plots of land, smaller parcels of land, and the labor that went into the production was significantly different in terms of price, the wages, and other factors. I said that was the last thing, but there's one. I'll leave it here for now.
No. Go on. If you have another point.
There's another discussion that you guys had with respect to the CBI and the difference between residency and and citizenship. Before we get to residency and citizenship, I think the first thing we must address is the issue of investment. What is investment and why investing? Generally, for the most part, investments are made to make a profit. It's not the only motive for investing. But it is a major issue to invest. You're not going to invest unless you're going to profit from your investment, generally speaking. So that's the first thing you must consider investing. Investment, you can invest your time, you can invest your other resources, your money and so forth. Cecil, as you said, there are persons who invested their time, their skills in St. Vincent, and over time they became citizens. I don't know if you want to call that Citizens by Investment Program. I can give you a couple examples.
Yeah, but I think we were speaking, Lance, in terms of a structured program.
Right. So a couple examples. Dr. Rao, Dr. Debnath, these are persons who came from India, and there are many who came after them and invested their time in St. Vincent and developed significant practices. And after a time, they became eligible for citizenship. I don't know whether or not they chose and became citizens, but they were eligible. Kirk resident, to be resident mean, and you can look in the dictionary for it, is to live in a place permanently or for a long time. That's what resident. That's
other than the place other than where you were born.
Wherever you live.
Okay.
So, Pigeon, you are resident to St. Vincent.
Okay, I understand.
Because you have always lived there, except for the periods when you went abroad for educational purposes, etc., vacation, whatever. So the simpler definition for resident is to live in a place permanently, like me and you, Philbert,
okay,
or to live there for a long time. So if you're going to ask persons to invest for a residency, currently, if you take the issue of investment and why investing, there is no difficulty now for having persons investing in St. Vincent with residency. That is where foreign direct investment, which is a, Kirk, you know, it's like investment you're able to attract. So you have persons come in, to invest. That's their motive. But in investing, while they invest, just like the doctors and the nurses who came in, these investors are required to live in St. Vincent for long periods, because investment don't produce profit overnight. So they're required to live here. So that's why some people can say that we already have a citizen by investment, because you reside, and after 5-6 years, the existing laws, the laws that have been there probably since independence, or maybe before, provide for these investors to become, well, first of all, to reside, and then to become citizens after a time. I think most persons who are listening to me know my stance on citizen by investment, but it has nothing to do with simply citizenship or investment. To me, it's more fundamental than that. It is what citizenship means to me. I can't support anybody trading it for money. That's not a political stance. That's my personal stance. What citizenship means to me, I will never support anybody trading it for money. Cecil, I definitely will go now and allow it.
All right. Thanks for your contribution, Rich, as usual. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Any DaSilva, any additional, I should say,
No,
reaction?
just what I asked him.
Okay.
I think we ought to still be concerned about a proper land use program in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, so that a lot of agricultural lands, although lands made that point, it could still get worse in terms of using a lot of agricultural lands for building houses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Getting close to the point of completion of the program, but we have a call now. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Mr. DaSilva himself.
Yes,
The
sir.
name is Hugh Stewart.
How are you?
I'm very good indeed. I heard that gentleman spoke just now. Apparently, he's an agriculturist. And he has never apparently married yet. Nevertheless, I'd like to invite him to go down with me to Richmondville Estate to see how much wastelands are down there. To produce whatever we want to be produced. Cecil, I thought I was going to. I went into Richmondville and I looked around and I asked questions and I saw things. And I wrote an answer in these papers. I don't know if it came out as yet.
It came out. I had a quick look at it, but it came out, yes.
All right. Wonderful. Wonderful. So you saw my views on that. On those,
Well, it's basically the views you expressed last week on the program.
Okay. Let's move on now. The gentleman just spoke last, a very good friend of his, and a friend of mine said he has about 15 acres up north to the side to rent out. Whoever wants to rent, whoever wants to do. You can get in touch with me and put him in touch with the owner of the land, and they can deal with that problem. Nevertheless,
and you think, from what he said, you think 15 acres would be enough to talk about in terms of?
For him.
No. I'm talking about for hold on. I'm talking about for
Yes,
anybody, period. Anybody in this day and age.
To what? To what?
15 acres is enough.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
All right. Okay.
So do you work half acre?
No, that's not the point. That's not the point. In terms of what Mr. Weiss was saying, he's saying the structure of land, the pattern, the ownership pattern is changed from the days of old bananas, when they had lease and the people at Orange Hill had their big plot and producing bananas, and you to a large extent producing bananas and fairly large plots. But he talked about the inefficiency of doing that, and he talked about the low level of labor, cost of labor. Those are some of the things he mentioned. He said now you won't have the same. The situation doesn't exist now, today, 2026.
That is Philbert's problem, productivity. You go in the Minister of Agriculture 2-3 months ago, in the yard, there were 4 watchmen or field open gate for you. Productivity, talking about again, productivity. That in the newspaper, the Vincent newspaper, you see, yes. And in the opinion section there are 2 beautiful articles on that page. You can read it, please. You see what we're talking about, productivity again. What government does and does not do. Right. I don't think Mr. DaSilva and I will be expected to be dependent on government for any living. I'm of the view that the citizens must work and pay taxes to upkeep the government. Not government upkeeping not a government of people. There's enough land in this country, apparently abandoned lands now, that could be cultivated to make this country a substantially better country than it is now. Nevertheless, I'd like to talk about four items. CBI, National Development Bank, VAT, and housing.
So Mr. Stewart, you may not be able to talk about all of them this morning. So you want to just pick one for today.
Well, you know my views of CBI already. I don't think the intentions have been cultivated in cooperatives as much as they could, or cooperating as much as they could. There's three criterions in Cecil right now: have as much money that the government can want, or the country can want, to invest in hotels, whatever it is. We don't have to invite anybody here to invite here to put on hotels. The three criterions in Kingston, head office in Kingston, had enough money to build any kind of hotel we want.
No, hold on, Hugh. That is against the policies and the role of the credit unions. They cannot do that. Credit unions are for its members, not for the body. It's for the members.
Well, Cecil, you know that I wrote to you some years ago a letter saying we should come together, use our credit union, some of our credit union shares to go in the sandals facing Mokoment.
Yeah, but I'm saying to you, the members can do that, not the body itself.
I wrote to you.
You wrote to me?
Remember.
You wrote to me? And invited me to do that? To pool shares, to pool yours and mine shares?
No, not pool, use.
Well, same thing. Come together as two members.
Come together as members to form a company to get that kind of place down yonder before someone got it.
No, I don't recall that letter to me. But anyway, go on.
The point is that the intentions don't need to seem to be able to cooperate with one another in business. I don't know why or what happened. They say some kind of ship is a leaky ship. Unfortunately, too many people believe that is the case. There's no partnerships, there's no business that join together to enter business.
What kind of advocacy would you offer in terms of helping the government to enable the people to come together? What kind of
I help in government?
No, what kind of advocacy?
You must teach cooperative in primary school and secondary school, and form cooperatives, partnerships, business companies in the secondary schools. In Trinidad, I have a daughter. She went to secondary school, of course, and she had formed a company with a fellow students and did very well, and they move on. It can be done in the same also.
So that's the kind of advocacy you would offer to.
I was asked Mr. DaSilva to help us with our accounts.
No, you can't ask him to help. The man, he has a firm, Hugh. You can ask him to help.
When we get going, of course, they employ his firm.
Okay, all right.
We got to move on, man. In business, we can put our weight in government to employ us and give us jobs and so forth. We go on the roadside. So we talk about road workers. Go on the roadside.
I didn't hear Mr. Weeks talking about road workers this morning.
He did talk about
road workers?
I thought he did, yes.
No, you were speaking about the construction, the manner in which roads are constructed and so forth. He thought we could have been getting better value.
Is that what you mean by road workers?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we got your point. But you wronged the person because the time is we have come to the end of
but you
the time.
interrupted me, so time is going.
No, but you see, I am the moderator. I have that privilege.
Yeah,
I have that privilege.
You have to stop me. There's no problem with that.
Exactly. But wrong the first. I notice you've become a regular caller to Isiotan. That's good.
You can have 5 workers. You get rid of 2. Any group.
Sorry, you said you can have, if you have, you can get rid of 2. That's what you said?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, I see that already.
You're advocating that.
I see that already.
But are you advocating that?
I'm advocating efficiency of work.
Okay, same language. Same language.
No.
All right.
Take care, brother. I miss you, Mr. DaSilva. You did very well today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Have a good day. And keep good. Well, gentlemen, there's one or two WhatsApp messages. I'll just read them for the sake of that they've come in and people have sent them. So let me just start with this one. It's saying, good afternoon, Mr. Ryan, the economy you are talking about, digital skills, etc. The Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, calls it the orange economy. All right, thanks for that. But it differs in a way from what we were. Well, I guess it doesn't differ, but the description, the term nomenclature. This is saying Lance is one of the most brilliant minds in SVG. He spoke for me when he said, and I paraphrase, that no amount of money will make me happy about selling my country's passports. For me, it is very emotional. It is a very emotional issue. That purchased passport can never be equal to mine. All right, so Lance, for you listening, you have somebody's in firm solidarity with you. And then there are one or two others which are late now. This person was commenting on the earlier point. He says, a very good morning, gentlemen. With respect to the airport, my respect to the project manager. I think he's almost Dr. Matthias. Yeah. This person has been trying to call a long time, and I hope Karen, you don't mind. Good afternoon. Oh, there it goes again. The same thing happened when I tried to call earlier, but to answer earlier. Well, anyway, that's it. Anyway. So, and the person goes on. He had to juggle many problems at the same time and have had many sleepless nights trying to anticipate unforeseen problems before they occurred. I have often wondered if he took a year holiday. He got a call and ask him that. The red eye is the overnight flight. All right, my friend, thanks for that. And then he goes on. There appears to be, I'm not sure what he's trying to, between the academic discussion and the practical real world implication, i.e., how many plumbers do need to train instead of the need for workers to be able to do plumbing. All right, so those are interesting points. And then there's no more. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. Correction to your comments. The first international flight to touchdown at AIA was Dynamic Air out of JFK. Thanks for the correction and the reminder, clarification. Yes, there was some guy in his ownership in that airline, and the flight did continue on to Guyana after landing at AIA. Thanks for that correction, my friend, whoever you are. I was just trying to underscore the importance of the airport, historical and contemporary importance of the airport. And our friend is saying good morning from Puerto Rico. Buenos dias. That was then, it's gone. And then Kirk, somebody has sent a message to say that you were being misleading when you talked about Grenada CBI program, that it does not include the E2 visa benefit. And he goes on to say, the E2 visa arrangement with the USA was there long before Grenada's CBI program started. In fact, this E2 visa program was given to Grenada after the invasion in the 1980s. The CBI applicants use it as a benefit just as other citizens of Grenada. It is not a feature of the CBI. So that person offered that clarification.
Yeah, okay.
All right? Okay, so for all those comments, I wish to thank all the authors of all those WhatsApp comments. And for all the people who listened to the program today, I thank you very much. And I would invite you to do the same thing next time we have a program. And of course, we have to give a lot of thanks to our guest, Mr. DaSilva of KDLT, and of course, Lansford and Mr. Stuart, he's sure to call it lastly. We thank you very much for being part of the program today. And on behalf of Philbert, Karen, and myself, have a very pleasant afternoon. And I hope everything go well for all of you and everybody who listens to the program today. And remember, let me play this again. Remember this. Today's the 9th anniversary. Well, not today, yesterday was. Listen.
They have a big speaker on it. They could go it up on camera.
The program is finished. Karen, thanks.